Hi, I'm Jason Gord for ThatShelf.com, and we're here to look at a new record from the TransCanada Highwaymen.
ThatShelf.
So I want to step a little bit back. When I first started collecting records way back in the day, I really didn't understand why one would ever buy an album. All the good songs were sort of individual singles, and it's funny because I grew up at that era where K-tel and a similar compilation albums were my go-to, absolutely. I'm like, why would I buy a whole record when there's only one or two songs that I want? In a funny way, that's exactly what we sort of come back to. That's how AM radio started, as a very singles, everyone buying 45s. I was obviously born during the period of the early 1970s and sort of came up that way, where album-oriented rock, or AOR, became a thing. And towards the 1980s, it sort of really cycled back in the time where you were seeing music videos on Much Music or MTV or wherever you were seeing your videos as individual singles, whereas the albums themselves. It actually wasn't until the Beatles. The Beatles CDs actually came out when I was in the 9th grade or grade 9. And that really let me believe, when I was buying the blue and the red album, which are being re-released, that's a whole nother conversation. But when I bought the blue and the red album, I thought that's all the Beatles that I want. And then I finally heard the albums in context, the songs in context, and that really made it shine. Also, a shout out to Stars on 45, which, forget listening to the entire record, is I was hearing the Beatles done as a disco version, as a cover, as little bits. And to this day, when there are certain Beatles songs, I'm expecting them to flow with the way that the Stars on 45 one does. Anyway, on K-tel, you had a whole bunch of collections. There was a couple that were incredibly important to me. This one was a big deal. This is Chart Action. And, you know, it has stuff like Gloria by Laura Branigan, You Can't Hurry Love by Phil Collins, Down Under by Men at Work. These were all bands that I ended up owning the whole records, especially at the time where you could get vinyl for super cheap. But this Chart Action is, I think I first had on cassette tape and then eventually found it on vinyl. You had stuff like this. Look at the Star Treks. I mean, incredible artwork. The sort of turntable and the spaceship here as a cartridge and a tone arm. Absolutely spectacular. All kinds of nonsense on here. Again, copyright 1983, K-tel International. In Winnipeg, Mississauga, Montreal, Every Breath You Take, The Police, Electric Avenue, Eddie Grant, Lies by Thompson Twins, Journey, The Tubes, Alan Parsons Project, Stray Cats. This was my way of just getting essentially my playlist directly from there. Now, as I started collecting vinyl, there was a bunch of other things that I would eventually pick up, and some of those would be stuff like these. These are sort of stuff that would just show up in the dollar bins. Not even $1. I was paying maybe $1 for 20 records at the time. But you get stuff like these incredible sort of Daylow posters. A bunch of these stuff date back to the 60s or 70s, but these ones are definitely sort of, you will see all the time in bins. Music Power, 22 original hits, original stars, incredible bongo band, Edgar Winter Group. Right, like literally this is where I would get my first taste of the incredible bongo band, not from hip-hop, but from this kind of collection. Sound Explosion, 22 original hits. I mean, you can see, you know, the kind of stuff that you would see advertised on TV, as advertised on TV. Here we are, Mindbender, 20 original stars, That's the Way I Like It by Casey and the Sunshine Band, Silver Convention, Wednesday, Heart, ABBA, Ohio Players. So a real nice mix of all kinds of nonsense here. This is copyright 1976. So that is the type of thing that would, you know, absolutely define for me the stuff that was coming out of the 70s and 80s. I was buying the stuff new in the 80s and then going back and actually getting a bunch of these singles afterwards when I was like, you know, playing off of records or when I had a radio show and stuff like that. Now, one record that I adored was Blast Off. I mean, first of all, I don't know of a better 80s cover than this. It's so both minimalist and obnoxious. The fact that it uses stencils. I remember getting those plastic stencils and making my own version of this A-Team logo. I mean, there's so many things that actually use that. But yeah, Blast Off, Think I'm in Love, Eddie Money, Make Believe by Toto, Keep the Fire Burning by REO Speedwagon. Randy Meisner's on here. Don't Fight It. Kenny Loggins and Steve Perry. When you have Kenny Loggins and Steve Perry together, my God, you have like a burst of incredible 80s stuff. You should hear How She Talks About You by Melissa Manchester, a completely underappreciated song. Eye of the Tiger, all kinds of awesome stuff. Now, these are obviously, you know, Canadian compilations. on K-tel, but very much of the idiom. And it was stuff like this that allowed me to listen to a bunch of stuff that I really wanted to listen to. Which brings us to this guy, TransCanada Highwaymen, which is a group, a super group of sorts. We got Bertg, Chris Murphy, Craig Northey, and Stephen Page from a numerous Canadian bands come together at last to cover a bunch of can rock. And you can see here that by that they're very much going for the shtick of the, old school K-tel collections. But what's awesome is they actually have this to actually show off some of that they might be coming in live. And of course, we know where we got that from. So what do we got on here? We have Stephen Page doing the theme from TransCanada Highwaymen. And then you have a bunch of stuff, some of which I know, some of which I don't know. But there are other Canadian hits by Canadian stars. There's stuff by Michael Pagliaro. Okay, but then you got stuff like Undone by the Guess Who. You have stuff by April Wine, obviously very famous. And then you have stuff, the fact that they're doing Pretty Lady by Lighthouse, I'm a huge, huge fan of Lighthouse. We got stuff from the Poppy family, amazing. The reason I got this was Annie Kim's, God bless Annie Kim. Annie Kim's Instagram actually let me know about this, as ridiculous as it is. Then I had to go to a local record store, shout out to Rotate This, where I picked it up because you have Stephen Page doing Rock Me Gently. Is it the best version of Rock Me Gently? No. Is it a cover of Rock Me Gently that I can buy on vinyl in 2023? Yes. So it's purchased. Raisin Robbery. I mean, the fact that you have Bertg doing a cover of Joni Mitchell, I'm super excited to hear. A song by Chester, a band I actually don't know, probably should know. Paul Anka, Stampeders, a song by Edward Bear, which is amazing. The DeFranco Family, and Bim. I do not know who Bim is, but I'm interested in hearing Can't Catch Me by Bim, sung by Craig Northey, and I look forward to actually digging into the originals. It's probably something I've heard and didn't know what the bloody song was. Anyway, let's sort of crack this open and see what the vinyl itself looks like. I mean, it does say here, the exact same as advertised on TV as we had in the earlier one. Sorry, let me get this here. Yep, like literally, if you look at that advertised on TV, you can see exactly what it is that they're going for. Same kind of shtick, absolutely. Yeah, we got people from all these bands coming together and actually giving us a sort of treat of this exact kind of vintage nostalgia schlock, but also a lot of fun. Inside, what do we have? Well, unsurprisingly, we don't get much. It is a Canadian release. It's not going to be a thing. The cardboard sleeve's okay. It's certainly not like some fancy audiophile tip-on jacket. And my most hated of hated straight-up paper sleeves. And we all know on this channel what we do with straight-up paper sleeves. You don't even try pulling the record out. You just rip it and just hope to God that it hasn't been completely destroyed when it was packaged. And I gotta say, inside, I don't see too much in the way of anything particularly egregious, but the artwork looks pretty awesome, I gotta say. It is available on streaming, but in terms of physical format, it seems that vinyl's the only way to go. And I, for one, am super excited to be digging into this. So yeah, there's our look at what's likely to be sort of a continuing run by these kind of guys that got together and celebrated the best of both schmaltzy and also kind of amazing Canadian entertainment. For thatshelf.com, I'm Jason Gorber. Please subscribe, follow us on social media. Let us know what you think of this record in the comments, and please visit thatshelf.com. All the best. We'll see you next video.